beauty and harmony, governed by one eternal law. All that begins must end. The reign of the old shogunate is over!
Questo è il periodo più oscuro della storia del Giappone. Per oltre 2 secoli lo shogunato Ashikaga ha mantenuto il controllo sul paese, ma dopo la sua caduta i signori della guerra più potenti e senza scrupoli di tutto il Giappone non potevano più essere tenuti a bada. Nel 1477 la guerra Onin portò alla caduta dello shogun. Mentre migliaia di samurai coraggiosi ingaggiano lotte fratricide su quelle che un tempo erano le pacifiche isole nipponiche, enormi imbarcazioni si sfidano per il controllo dei mari in tempesta. Una terra divisa, un popolo sofferente. L'anima di una nazione inizia a morire. 10 condottieri leggendari lotteranno per la supremazia, ma solo uno si ergerà vittorioso sconfiggendo tutti i suoi nemici, governando la nazione come il nuovo Shogun. Il Giappone potrà essere governato da un solo uomo, un grande guerriero, un grande saggio e un grande condottiero. Ora è il momento di padroneggiare le tecniche che i tuoi predecessori hanno tramandato fino a te. Ora è il momento di sconfiggere chiunque voglia impedirti di diventare Shogun. Ora è il momento di Total War.
Naval warfare in Japanese history is very, very different to European warfare. The first major difference, of course, from our previous titles is that now we're really talking about the age of kind of not sail and definitely not gunpowder. So the units you're looking at are basically oar-ridden boats, in the most part, and they're units that have, of course, predominantly about arrow warfare or boarding capability. And the Japanese used to build their boats around the kind of principle of a floating fortress. So essentially you'd go from these tiny little wooden skiffs all the way up to these giant floating castles, which would fight one another off the coasts of Japan. And that's kind of the next major point, is that the coasts of Japan are absolutely critical here. We've now introduced kind of land warfare and coastal warfare as well. So you're now actually having to navigate around these coastlines and shoals and rocks and beaches, all of which of course can damage your ships and destroy the hulls and eventually sink them, and therefore do great damage to the men and the crew on board as well. There are a number of special abilities as well on the naval side. So we've included things now like kind of mining the area and all the rest of it, which mean that you'll actually get mines bobbing up and down in the sea, and those are basically caskets of black powder which when knocked into go boom and destroy any given boat. So all of these things kind of change the way that naval gameplay is played. You'll also find that the command and control for naval gameplay is much more precise and much more finite. You'll feel a lot more in control of it. It's no longer about these big master and commander style ships kind of having to tack with the wind and sail around one another. It's now very much a case of, because these things are road, you can just tell them start here, stop there, and they'll go and they'll stop. So the naval battles in one respect feel a little bit more like the land battles in terms of command and control. And we've got a large different number of ship types, as I've said. All of those, just like the troops on land, get upgrades and abilities which are given from the campaign map and from the Way of Bushido. And of course you can specialise your samurai generals in being admirals. So they don't just become land warriors, they become great commanders of fleets and ships as well. And essentially, all of this is, as I've said, is done to try and make sure that you get a very unique and very historically accurate kind of impression of naval warfare. Of course, we introduced naval warfare in Empire and Napoleon, and Shogun is its third time out. So we're getting a lot better at perfecting this type of gameplay now and making it a lot more fun and a lot more engaging. And as I've said, one of the major features here is, of course, the inclusion of land. The last thing to say on that point is that we haven't yet been able to fully combine land and sea combat, so controlling armies and navies at the same time. But we have got a really interesting and fairly decent kind of halfway house toward that. And that basically involves what we call kind of like a D-Day landing style situation. So if you invade a province and by ocean with a large army, and that province has a navy kind of defending its coastline, then you can send your navy in with its guys on it, and in the first stage you'll fight a naval battle off the coast of that province with the castle in the distance, and you'll be kind of sailing around one another, destroying the enemy fleet. If you successfully destroy the fleet, then in the same turn your troops will be allowed to beach, and then you'll besiege a castle built right next to the coastline, and that then leads you into kind of like siege gameplay and siege warfare. But it's kind of a two-stage thing. So the boats all move up to the shore, men are all kind of dispersed onto the beach, you grab a hold of the men after having controlled the ships, and then you can go ahead and siege the castle. We paid a lot of attention to the sieges and siege warfare because they do make a very distinct difference. So sieges in Japanese times, just like their coastal warfare, are very, very different to their European counterparts. You'll notice siege warfare in Shogun 2 features these kind of almost wedding cake style castles where they have multiple layers and tiers and entrances to the insides and outsides. And these castles can of course be built in various different locations. These all of course have a significant difference and different effect on the way that you'd fight the battle, where you can be approached from, where the enemy might come at you from. Within the castles themselves, you've also got a large number of different areas which can go backwards and forwards between the control of different teams. Now the Japanese used to fight sieges in a very kind of unique fashion. They had a very much kind of open door policy of come on in if you think you're hard enough. So they would literally give certain areas to the enemy and let them scale the walls and the like, just so as they could actually get to the point where they could choke them into a really bad corridor of death or something similar. So it's really much more give and take on the kind of Japanese style of warfare when it comes to sieges and how those work. And it's a very interesting and kind of fun way to play, especially when you consider that you can upgrade all of the different castle types up to 5 times. So if you consider you've got a castle that can be built on flat land, a castle built by the coast, and a castle built on a mountain, and each can be upgraded up to 5 levels, that gives you an initial net of 15 different types of structure to fight over. On top of that, of course, you have all of the weather effects which come in, winter, spring and summer, which also change the dynamics of the battlefield. You have the dynamics of the different army compositions, archery heavy, cavalry heavy, infantry heavy, using gunpowder, not using gunpowder, all of these different types of things. We've done a great deal this time around to make sure that the AI is a lot more challenging, both on the campaign side and on the battle side. So whatever your kind of expertise, right the way from novice all the way through to expert, you should find a level that's pretty challenging for you, interesting and fun to play. Now, multiplayer is a massive new area for us in Shogun 2. I can't stress that enough. It's not just the traditional modes of play out of the box. So you're not just looking at multiplayer campaign, multiplayer battles, land and sea, which we do have and they come out of the box. We now also have a full brand new pillar to the game, which is a persistent online avatar linked to your Steam account, and that's your general unit. And just like the RPG system in the campaign game, he gains skills and abilities as he ranks up according to you fighting battles online. In addition to that, of course, you unlock new units, you also unlock new abilities and armor sets and various different things, and all of these you can use to create and customize an army, right the way down to painting the banners and the units themselves and everything, you know, literally like a collectible army essentially, and it gets tailored around the way you want to play. If, for example, I field archery units 2 or 3 times in a battle and they get veterancy, like they get upgraded, not only can I upgrade my general, but I can now uniquely paint those archers and field them as veterans, and I can change their stats too. I'll get given XP for maybe giving them more range or more accuracy, something like that. And other players, I'll get a description which other players can see online, and I'll come to be known as somebody who favours ranged warfare, or somebody who favours, you know, cavalry charges or something similar. And all of this can take place in what we call like a persistent online world. So not quite in the MMO sense, but not too dissimilar, where you fight across all of the provinces of Japan, unlocking new units and new abilities and new armor sets for your avatar, and of course XP all the way you go, and that leading to abilities. And then when you've completed that, or even before if you're feeling keen, you can jump into a clan game, and I mean clan in the sense of the internet. So you can join another clan, and actually in real time, provinces change control and change hands between online clans, and at the end of a given period, we tally up which clan has the most victories in the most provinces on that map, and just like any sport, we promote the top few teams and we relegate the bottom few. So you'll find that a league and a kind of a tier structure kind of, you know, automatically creates itself. If you constantly rage quit, if you're one of these guys that doesn't see a game through to the end because you don't want a loss on your record, then do that 3 to 5 times in a row. You will get what we call the dishonourable coward trait, which means other players can see straight away that you're not the kind of guy that finishes a game. You can then choose not to play people with that trait, which means that to get rid of it, the 3 games you need to play through to the end, you find that dishonourable cowards have to play other dishonourable cowards in order to actually get rid of the trait. So it's just a nice way of kind of balancing and stopping people griefing too much. And in general, you know, it will try and get you somewhere within your realm of gameplay experience. So you should always try and find somebody that offers you a challenge. But like I say, multiplayer is the big new addition for Shogun 2, in addition to everything else we've done on sieges and naval warfare and the campaign and stuff as well. It's genuinely a very big and very deep game. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those of undetermined origin, we are of course looking at Total War Shogun 2, and it's available for PC from March the 15th this year. Shogun 2's campaign game features a large number of advancements and changes over previous Total War games, and this is an era that we've only recently started to talk about and explore a little bit. In terms of the actual campaign game itself, one of the major changes for the actual overall visual aspect is this unique combination of 2D and 3D artwork. And this is a first for a Total War game, and we've done this for a couple of reasons. The first is that when you take a look at the map, each of the 10 clans that you can choose to play start with just one region under their control. And by rendering that one region in 3D and all other unexplored areas in 2D, you don't get a sense of a huge, overwhelming kind of world space to try and conquer. It adds a sense of kind of mystery and immersion as well. And finally, it's a nice little nod back to the original Shogun, which we created all of 10 years ago, which of course all took place on this kind of 2D cartography style map. So it does a number of different things for us. The map of Japan is very, very large. We've got a large number of different regions in it. It expands out across all of the Japanese islands, and they kind of sit for yours to conquer, as it were. Now, of course, all of the traditional sort of like settlement building, tax raising and farming takes place on the Shogun 2's kind of campaign map. And there are a number of kind of unique differences and changes there as well.
Although I greet death, I do not fear the icy grip.
So for players who are new to Total War games, it is a unique combination of real-time and turn-based strategy. On the campaign map, not unlike, say, a game like Risk or Civilization, you take your turns as one of the major clans of the period. You administer your empire, you grow out, you build your armies, you tax your people, and you construct new settlements and new buildings and the like. And then, of course, when 2 armies meet on the campaign map, it zooms down and you then fight that battle in real time. And different to other real-time kind of battles, say something like StarCraft or indeed Command & Conquer, The real-time battles in Shogun 2, of course, don't feature any resource gathering or base building. It's all about managing the army that you take to the battlefield, and that's it. So the real emphasis there is on strategy and kind of the combat. So that's what makes it very, very different. The campaign map also features a large number of different agent types. And all of these have unique special functions that they perform on the campaign map for you. So you will have command of geishas, ninjas, monks, metsuke, and all of these, and generals of course, who lead your armies, and all of these have unique functions and unique things that they can do. Essentially, the big principle behind Shogun 2 is to simplify and balance the game. So every agent has an equal and opposite. So everything they do, there is a counter agent that does something in defense of that. So for example, the ninja's an obvious one. The ninja is an assassin. And it's the ninja's job to go out kind of under subterfuge and infiltration, get into an enemy camp or an enemy army, and destroy an enemy general and or enemy political figure, whoever you see fit. The ninja's opposite is a character called a metsuke, which is kind of a secret policeman type agent. And his whole job is to find and reveal enemy ninjas and assassins and then arrest or execute them. And he gets rid of them on the campaign side. The other thing that we've changed, of course, on the campaign map is we now have a full 4-season kind of campaign turns set of actual seasons on the campaign map. So previously we've had spring, summer / autumn, winter turns. But now we actually have a full 4-season model, so you have a full spring, full summer, a full autumn and a full winter. Now what that does is, of course, it affects like the microeconomics of the game, so stuff like the harvests and everything you get, the resources and that sort of stuff, and taxation, but most critically, of course, it affects the battlefields that you fight on. Fighting somewhere in winter and fighting on exactly the same location in the summer are two very different experiences. They have unique differences on the troops and everything else, as we've previously spoken about, and they'll also do a variety of different things to the factions themselves, and all of these, as I say, figure into the game. And in addition to that, we've got some nice different kind of seasonal effects for lighting and everything else, and it makes things look really nice. Now there are kind of two major tiers, or three I suppose, to the units in Shogun 2, when you're raising armies that you then use on the battlefield. So your first tier of units are like Ashigaru, they're peasants. They're available right from the start, you can recruit them at almost any of your settlements, and essentially they're untrained kind of light infantry, as it were. They're willing amateurs. On the other hand, of course, you then later on, as you build up your dojos and increase your kind of campaign map buildings, and get access to samurai. Samurai, of course, are much more professional warriors, better bonuses on the battlefield and so forth. And finally, if you build all the way to the top of the tech trees, you get access to legendary dojos, and these give you access to what we call hero units, and they are masters of a martial arts style. So they may well be, say, a sword master or a spear master, and on the battlefield they will appear as a single unit surrounded by a small number of kind of retainers or disciples, as it were. And they fight very, very well when used properly.
Without skill. But even so, these foreigners and their guns could give a man power and victory.
Shogun 2 features a brand new RPG system for all the characters, and this is something that is absolutely, like I say, a new invention from previous Total War games. Every action the character performs gives the character XP, and each character type, generals, metsuke, monks, ninjas, geishas, all have unique skill trees in the game. You can then spend those XP points on upgrades to the character. Broadly speaking, each character type has two major kind of career paths, as it were. A ninja's a good example. They have a path that takes them down the road of kind of espionage and spying, or a path that takes them down the road of assassination and murder. And you can upgrade either or. So when you choose to take them down one route, it's mutually exclusive. You say, right, I'm going down the assassin route with this ninja, and within that, I'm going to choose the following options. And that builds a ninja that you need at that time. What we're trying to do by doing that is make the characters a lot more personal and a lot more kind of essential, so that players create characters that they use on the campaign map, and it is a pain in the ass if they get killed, right? And they are useful for certain things. It also makes each one important and unique. If you lose a general in battle, you don't just go, oh whatever, I'll buy another one and chuck him in, because that could have been your siege general or your cavalry general, however else you've created them. That's brand new for Shogun 2, and it features very much along the kind of duality lines of the game, the yin and yang sense of balance. So that sense whereby on the technology tree, for example, on the campaign map, you have Bushido technologies for war, and you have Chi technologies for society. And again, you can choose which way down those you go, looking again for a sense of harmony and balance. So this idea, this principle of kind of like balance and backward and forward is pretty much throughout the game. And if you go too far one way, you'll be extremely weak in another dimension. So the idea is that as a player, you need to think about those things.
To
No deception is to be on guard against its use.
Land battles from Shogun 2 are a very different affair to the games that we recently made, like Empire and Napoleon. This is predominantly, until the kind of middle age of the game, about hand-to-hand fighting, kind of feudal Japanese martial arts ability. And that sees you kind of deploying katana troops, yari troops with spears, naginata guys with these large kind of curved blades at the end, and of course a variety of different archery type troops as well, and cavalry. And again, the initial aim there is on accessibility and balance. It's very simple to pick up and it's very hard to master. And the idea is that the real depth and the complexity comes in exactly the kind of armies you raise, the troops you use and what you do. Now on the actual kind of battlefields, of course, one of the first differences people will notice are the kind of visual differentiations. So essentially the unit types, there's literally probably only between 30 and 40 different types of unit. Now if you imagine, that's down from over 300 in our previous games. So for a game like Shogun 2, the depth and the strategies is really in the kind of things that the units can do and the special abilities that the units have and the way that you employ them against each other. But essentially, of course, what you want to look for is the rock, paper, scissors dynamic between units. You want to use cavalry against archers, you want to use archers against infantry, you want to use spears against cavalry, all of these kind of basic mixes. And then within that, of course, it's literally the kind of type of armies you build and what you do with them. And we've still got the very kind of similar and impressive kind of visuals of the combat mechanics that that Total War is very, very famous for. These large-scale kind of hand-to-hand brutal melee battles that you kind of see more in cinema than you do in games. To that end, the units have got a great deal larger detail on them. As I was saying before, we've got about 8 different body parts per unit. Now that doesn't sound like much, but when you consider that we can render up to 56,000 units on screen at any one time, you're talking about a lot of detail in each individual one. Each unit even has, I think it's about 49 bones per skeleton, so that they actually flex and move properly and they can fight very, very well. You get much more realistic kind of hand-to-hand combat coming out of all of these different units. We motion capture professional martial artists to make sure that you get a very realistic look and feel to the combat as well, and that fluidity is really present by upping the bone count in the bodies and of course upping the polygon count on the units themselves, allowing us to get a lot more detail into them as well. You'll notice that on the battle side the UI has been simplified and kind of overhauled too, so that all of the kind of major things that you can do with the game are kind of presented in the little radial buttons just above the actual unit card itself, and that tells you straight away what kind of special abilities and upgrades the unit has and what kind of special formations, for example, it might be able to pursue. And all of these things are researched and upgraded on the campaign map using the technology tree. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. You build new buildings on the campaign map, you research new technologies, and you get access to different things for your troops on the battlefield. One of the other big things, of course, that we've mentioned previously is, when linking to the campaign map gameplay as well, is the environments and exactly how that affects the battle too. So, of course, for Shogun 2, you can now choose to fight at night. So if you take on a battle in the evening, you'll get certain benefits and certain penalties. You may, for example, have Battlefield Ninja. Now, of course, extremely effective at night. If you deploy them in an area where it's dark, and they can use the forests as cover and the like, they can be a really, really good kind of hit and run, almost spec ops assassination squads against enemy key units. And they work really, really well for that. However, choose to fight, at dusk or even indeed, midday in a clear summer's day, or indeed at spring, and of course your archers will have a much better range, reload kind of speed and everything else, and greater accuracy because they can see their targets. And all of these things are taken into account in the actual kind of battle dynamics and what they do. Of course, as I said, all different units have a number of different powers and kind of power-ups. To give you another example on what we've done for the level of detail, all of the trees are now hand-modelled. We don't use like an automated program to do that anymore. And there's a chap in the studio whose actual job it is and whose passion it is to create and animate trees. It takes all kinds, and we're very, very thankful to have him because as a result we get some of the most realistic looking trees in the game. And there are over, I believe it's 80 variants of tree for seasons, and that's 80. And all of that just means that you get the most realistic battlefields that you can possibly get. And the battlefields vary, of course, all across Japan. You've got these kind of very unique sort of valleys, peaks and mountains that are unique to the Japanese topography. And in addition to that, of course, you get these kind of flat plains, and as well as these beach kind of engagements and everything else. Hello, I'm Kieran Brigden, the Studio Communications Manager for the Creative Assembly. Today we're going to show you a ninja assassination movie on the campaign map of Shogun 2 Total War. So you can see here we have one of our provinces and cities selected. We're going to choose the ninja agent and move him out of the town. The ninja is one of many agent types available, and his primary function is the assassination of enemy figures. So we're going to send him in now and have him kill the enemy general in charge of the army. So you can see here the assassination attempt has been successful, the enemy general has been killed, and now nobody leads the enemy army. Our own ninja also levels up, assuming his next skill rank, and is moved safely away from the scene of the crime. The campaign map now also rotates in full 3D. That's pretty much it for Shogun 2's quick glimpse at the campaign map. Thank you very much for watching.